Another one of these decision games, mini games. This one's Khartoum. It looks a lot like, and strangely, the rules are a lot like the campaigns of Montrose that I played a little earlier. I pulled that back out because I found some things that read differently in these rules. There are some significant differences. This is supposedly its own system, Hand of Destiny. I have the feeling that maybe Montrose was started first. I don't know this for sure. And then they sort of had parallel development, very similar types of games in terms of the way the map looks. You know, it's a point-to-point map, but it's got a certain graphical appearance to it. The card inclusion, although the cards in this are more than just a set of event cards, which is probably the biggest difference between the two. The kind of victory that this has. I did notice one thing that I definitely at least misinterpreted in Montrose, which is the rules for pursuit. And maybe we'll get to that, I don't know. But anyway, this one's particularly interesting to me because I have the old SPI. Well, it was actually under TSR, but whatever. It still had the SPI symbol and said SPI. It didn't say Decision Games yet. Soldiers of the Queen, which had Amduran, I think it's called, which was sort of the revenge for this. The revenge for the Battle of Khartoum, where Chinese Gordon gets killed. But anyway, Gordon is in this, and significantly, it looks like an important figure in it. There are some weirdnesses to this, though. Anyway, I don't know of anything else that handles this campaign, so that's kind of cool in and of itself. I'm always just tickled pink to find things that are like, oh, I don't think anybody's handled this before, you know, or at least I don't have anything that handles it. I don't have a turn marker. Montrose came with some markers you needed to use, and one of them was the turn marker. They're, you know, you can use anything as a turn marker, a coin or whatever, so I actually think that's pretty cool to say, look, we're on such a budget, let's not put that in. Let's make sure we get, you know, we don't have a lot of counters when it comes down to it. And I don't know what they say here. They say what a complete, I remember them saying what a complete game contains, but maybe on the back. But it's not a lot of counters. It's 40 counters total, you know, and you got to think Napoleon at Waterloo came with like 100. 100 was sort of the smallest you could put anything to before. I kind of like that they're doing these tiny little games. Look, you don't need a ton of counters to make something, you know. And, you know, I feel like Montrose, the issues had more to do with the victory conditions, where I found it a little bit less enthralling than I would hope for. So this has different victory conditions and a different flavor to it. And it also does some things a little differently. Let's start with it. And very small set of standard rules, 4 pages, and then 2 pages of exclusive rules, but yes, I'm usually in favor of sparse rules and whatnot. I'm finding these, at least in one place, I found that I didn't feel like they were adequate to cover things. They're pushing the limits of stuff with these games, you know, and there's not room for explanation or whatnot. Now, Montrose came out with like 8 pages of rules, more than this, but a couple of the pages were not devoted to the game. There was historical and designer notes, which I always find useful, and some examples of play and stuff. I think this could have benefited from another couple of pages in here, or at least a little bit more. All right. And like I said, these two systems, the two systems are very similar in a lot of ways. We'll take a look at the actual rules, though. So, yep, point-to-point system with little lines to indicate how you move things. And we got river routes, land routes, and desert routes, which will have different effects. We'll look at the terrain effects in particular, probably more as we're trying to play the game, but certainly. And those are all defined in the terrain effects chart, as are the different types of locations that we have here, which are normal clear. There's a fortress at Khartoum itself. There's some rough spaces, and then there are towns all around. The towns and Khartoum are your victory conditions. Khartoum is not as important as it might seem as a victory point thing. It's one of 3 that's worth 3 points, and all the other towns are worth 1. But I should get to the basic rules first, right? There's recruit boxes. Both sides have places where their reinforcements go that they're able to get units from. I think those are mostly going to come in with campaign cards, as opposed to in Montrose, which had a recruiting system built into it, which just always allowed units to come back. And then there's a dead units pile for units that cannot be replaced. Now, the only thing I see here is the Empire eliminated units, which have, I think everything has means of replacement. As far as the specific rules are really, that's where it really gets muddy for me when I start looking at those. It feels like they were trying to do maybe too much with this. Now, Miranda is the designer for the system. Cummins, working as developer, I think he develops everything in Decision Games, which is probably too big a portfolio, to be honest. And then this particular scenario, it's not spelled out. I'm guessing Miranda is also the scenario designer for this, but I can't be sure because it doesn't name anyone else, but it just gives system design, so who knows? Okay, where were we? We got definitions of things, friendly enemy, sure. The counter information, okay. There's a number of pieces of information on a counter. There is the unit designation. Over here is a little symbol if it's elite. The unit type is going to be the imagery. I know it's hard to see on here. It's not trivial necessarily on the counters themselves, especially with my eyes. Major blurrage. Sorry about that, folks. Zoom too quickly. Contingent is used, I think, mainly for determining whether reinforcements come, but there may be some special rules as to contingent staying together. And every unit has a battle strength on it. Now, what's interesting is, like, Gordon has a battle strength on him. And when we look over these, these rules talk about leaders. It would seem like Gordon's a leader, but I'm a little blurry and confused as to what else isn't. So, like, tribal units have the name of a leader, and the Mahdi himself has the name of a leader. And in both cases, they're fairly strong units, and I don't know that they're really leaders. We'll see if that matters. I think Gordon counts as a leader. I don't know if there's any others on the board. And it may be that all modest units are able to move more fluidly than leaders are. There is a problem with the pursuit rules, though, if that's the case, because leaders are specific to the pursuit rules in certain ways. The elite unit is going to have certain specific advantages, which we'll hit as we hit the systems that they do. Primarily in combat, they give you a tactical advantage. Okay. Like in Campaigns of Montrose, You draw a campaign card. You implement what it says. It's not just an event now, though. It drives your movement and I don't remember what else. Reinforcements and special effects and stuff like that are all contained on each card. So, but it's not like a CDG or anything. You're just drawing at random for the most part. If an event calls for recruiting, they get put on the map at this point. Then you're allowed to move the forces that you're allowed to move. That'll be determined by your card. And then if you're in the same space as enemy units, you have to attack. And then things go the same way for the second player. And then you move the turn. You move the marker on the TRT. I'm getting used to it. But it's like, just sort of it was a random acronym showing up at first. I'm like, the what? Okay. Campaign cards. So they have a number of things on them. Like I say, you pick it at the beginning of the turn, and it drives your turn usually. It might have recruits that you get on the map or replacements. They're allowed to move that turn. Then it indicates which units can move and how far they can move. I think we'll get to a place where I've got complaints about that. There might be some additional event effects that are in play. It tells you which stage of your turn that you actually engage in each of these activities if they're not already kind of defined. If all the cards are discarded, the discards form a new draw deck and the deck starts anew, but some cards can cause a reshuffle and some cards can be removed from the game, and there was some confusion about that too when we get to the specifics. Okay. The events could include a battle bonus that gives you a combat ability during the turn, and other stuff's just special. Stacking. You can have any number of pieces in a space. You can move through friendly units without hindrance. If you move into enemy units, you have to stop, and then you'll be in battle. Fog of War. In general for this system, you can't examine the opposing unit's stacks unless you're in the same space, but you'll see the top unit on the board. In this particular scenario, only the modest units are hidden. All the Empire units are fully visible to them. They had a lot more information about what was going on. Movement. The card is going to tell you types of units and a distance that they can move. If a campaign card says all that player's units may be moved in a turn. This is an issue because later they're going to define static units. Some units have no movement instructions on any cards, hence they may never move. To me, all will always allow you to move any pieces. And there are units that are defined as garrisons in the scenario, but there's nothing that says they can't move. And there's no movement allowances on the pieces. The movement allowances are on the cards. I assume the garrisons can move, and they're just regular stuff. They don't look different. They look like infantry. I may have to look at to see if there's any errata on this. I'm just going to peek on BGG about that. But anyway, let's keep going. If a card says move cav equal 3, move infantry equal 2, this means the player can, in the ensuing march phase, move all his cav units up to 3 spaces and all his infantry up to 2. Units eligible to be moved can be moved in any direction, combination, etc. Movement's voluntary, and it's up to that amount. You can move in stacks or individually. There's not really a reason to move in stacks. There's no overrun or anything like that. You can converge units into a single space and they'll be able to fight at the same time. The TEC lists the different effects of the terrain. Yeah. Sometimes units will have to cease movement when they enter a particular type of terrain. Sometimes units can't use certain types of paths, I guess. But then here we get to static units. There are units that have no movement instructions on any cards, hence they may never move. Again, if it says all, I gotta assume they can move, unless there was some specific disclaimer otherwise. Some scenarios will divide armies into 2 or more contingents. The campaign cards will specify which contingents may move during the march phase of that turn. In this case, the Empire is pretty much split between the British and the Egyptian forces, and I think the cards only allow you to move one nationality at a time on any given card. Okay, rivers. Okay, a whole bunch of special rules. And to a large extent, it feels like these were built because of Khartoum, but it's like, yeah, we need river movement for everything else. And they actually changed the river movement in here. So, but if a friendly fleet or engineer, I don't think there are any engineers, is present in a river space, and I do think there are fleets. There are river boats. I'm assuming those are fleets, but again, I don't think it's spelled out that they are over here. And that's the thing. Like, my assumption is maybe garrisons shouldn't move. Maybe river boats are fleets. I don't know. But anyway. A friendly fleet or engineer is present in a river space. Units do not have to stop when entering. And we'll actually look, and there aren't any river spaces here. There are river routes, which is different, and like I said, the rules are different here. So, let me see. Oh, Egyptian garrisons. Here it is. Garrisons may not move. Excellent. It is specified. Okay. Yeah, river movement, it says ignore rules 12.1 and 12.2. That's what we're in right here. So I'm going to ignore bridging and fleets. And we'll get to how those are handled otherwise. But again, yeah, there really aren't river spaces. So, fleet transport. A fleet that starts in a space with friendly land units may embark and transport those land units. Place the land units underneath the fleet counter. The land units move along with the fleet. At the end of the fleet's movement, they're debarked. They may not otherwise move. Up to 3 land units may be transported by each fleet at one time. I'm assuming the cards will handle some of the information we need there. And if enemy units are present in the last space of a fleet move, a battle occurs there. The land units debark and fight. The fleets will fight the same as land units do. Battle. Going to be very, very similar to the Montrose rules. You can see why. You have a battle results table. On a 5, you have panics. 6, you have eliminations. That's the base, the non-Irish in the Montrose system. Again, these are like parallel games, but they didn't quite fit it into this, this series. So you determine tactical superiority. Each player rolls a die. If you have an elite unit, you get a +1, no matter how many you have. If your campaign card tells you anything, you might get a bonus from that. And whoever has the highest modified die roll has tactical superiority for the battle. In the event of ties, the defender gets it. I don't think that's the case because we have a winner of the tactical die roll, which I think involves who gets the advantage on a tie roll. I think. I don't recall. I read through those rules, but they didn't stick at all because there are too many little special cases. Okay, then you'll conduct the battle, and this is done a lot like, well, pretty much like Montrose. You line up your units. The player who has tactical superiority lines up second. It really doesn't matter, but he picks one and rolls a number of dice equal to that unit's battle strength. Now here, I think Gordon, because these rules are a little different from Montrose in terms of battle, is not a leader like the leaders were in the Montrose game. In the Montrose game, they gave units bonus dice. Here, I think Gordon counts as an extra unit with 1 die, which is kind of a shitty unit, but whatever. But it also means he doesn't need actual units he can fight on his own. And he's got his staff and a retinue with him, so it kind of makes sense that he's adding one. You roll the dice and compare it to the battle results table, and you implement that result. Then you move that unit down, and it won't get used again. The person who's targeted chooses which units they take losses on. They can take losses on the units that have already gone, or maybe on units that have been panicked, although that's something that I found different in this, and maybe I'm mistaken about that. We'll get to that in a moment. And you just alternate back and forth, firing one unit's dice off, and then, whatever hits happen, the owning player of the hit units takes the losses. And then eventually someone might end up with a bunch of units all at the end, and they just roll them all. There's no differentiation of the units in terms of their their firing capability, so you can just roll all the dice at once, because the person taking the hits determines where they get hit. Okay. Eliminated. An enemy unit of the targeted player's choice is removed from the map and placed in the dead pile. That unit's been permanently knocked out of the fight. Yeah, well, it might come back, though. Panic. One unit of the targeted player's choice is flipped over to its reverse side. Now, I think in Montrose they were blank. In this side, they tell you whether or not you got the unit at start or as a reinforcement, which is a helpful little sorting, I guess. I didn't use it. I sorted by the front because I needed to know the specific units that I'm setting up. So it didn't really help much. But it's a useful thing to check. That will not roll any dice for the remainder of the battle. If the unit was panicked when it gets a panic result, it's treated as eliminated above. Now, it doesn't say anything about what you choose from here, but okay, units in spaces containing fortresses, forts, or bases ignore panic results. We have one fortress in the game. There is an advanced rule for forts, but they're not used in this scenario. But I'll skim over that just to give you a vague idea of it. I was kind of surprised at what's in and not. I don't know why. Once one side's eliminated or fully panicked, the other side has won, and the one whose units were all eliminated or panicked loses the battle. The side that won holds the space. The losing side has to move panicked units into any adjacent space unoccupied by enemy units. If there's more than one panicked unit, they can split up. Fleets and up to 3 units in the same space may retreat along river spaces. There are no river spaces, so that I don't know what that means. I think they can go along river routes. The land units must be disembarked at the end of the retreat. Units may otherwise not retreat into a river space. Again, retreating units can't retreat into an enemy-occupied space. If there's not a legal space available, the retreating units are eliminated. After the battle, all panicked units become unpanicked. If defending forces in a fortress, fort, or base, the defending units ignore all panic results. Eliminations are applied normally. There are specifics as to who can use the fortress. It's only the Empire that gets the advantage here. They also get supply, which is an optional or an advanced rule. Here, the advanced rules don't feel like a add whatever you want the way Montrose did. Here it feels like, hey, you play with the advanced rules, if you want. Or you don't, and I probably will, because that's what I do. Some battles can be generated by campaign guards with special rules. Great. Some are elite. When defending, elite units are not subject to panic results. I think that means they can't absorb them either, though. So they don't protect your other units in any way. You just can't pick them for panics. Okay. Let me take a pause here, because I want to take a look at the loss rules for Montrose. Because I think Montrose allowed you, and I certainly played it this way, to pick panicked units for elimination. I say that is because, look, I haven't seen anything here, but there's a note Not a rule, just a note. A player must apply all eliminations before any panics and must apply the eliminations to face up unpanicked units first. I don't think there's something like that in Montrose. For each eliminate result, the targeted player must remove a panicked or unpanicked combat unit and return it to his off-map pool. I don't see any such note. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know how I feel. I kind of like the idea of, I liked the idea of being given the choice in Montrose. I felt like it was an interesting option. Like if you're winning the battle, you might want to take eliminations on your panicked units because they're weaker and they haven't gotten to, and they don't get to fire or whatever. I don't know. I think you'd almost always take eliminations on panicked units. Anyway. So advanced rules, artillery. If one side has more artillery units, I don't think there are any in this scenario. I don't remember seeing any. That side adds 1 to its tactical superiority die roll. Fleets and Gatling guns are counted as artillery for this purpose. Pretty minor. Well, wait, there's fleets. Well, there's river boats, which certainly do, you know, my knowledge of the period would say, yeah, there would be like Gatling guns or cannon or something on those river boats. They weren't just like side wheel paddle boats with like no guns on them. Break off. Certain units may execute a break off during a round of battle. This occurs when those units would otherwise fire. In place of the units firing, you can attempt to withdraw them from the space. You move the unit that break off 1 space per the rules of retreat. They're out of the battle and may not be fired on. Yeah, if you're going to lose a battle anyway, maybe it's worth trying to get a unit out of there. But I don't know. I don't know how often. Panicked units cannot break off. Pursuit after battle. Now, again, this was an optional, this was a pick your options from a whole menu of stuff, and I marked off what I wanted to and what I didn't in Montrose. I did use this. It had horrible effects on the game because you could just keep pursuing indefinitely, and I feel like this is the same. After winning a battle, the winning units remain in the space they currently occupy normally. However, this rule allows the winning player to declare a pursuit. Pursuit is declared if the attacker wins a battle or if all enemy units have conducted a break-off. Leaders in all types of cavalry may perform pursuit. Other units may not. I think I let everything perform pursuit when I played Montrose. I looked up the Montrose rules to see if they were different, and they are. Leaders, cavalry, Highlanders, and Irish can pursue, which means the Lowlander units are the only ones that can't, but I'm pretty sure I used Royalist Covenanter Lowlanders in pursuits, which might have, like I had a Covenanter victory, I think, and it was real close, and it might have been the difference of the situation easily. Pursuing units may not have been panicked in the battle. You can move some or all of them one additional land space after the battle. They all have to move together in any one direction. If the enemy retreated, they don't have to move into the space where the retreat was concluded. If they end up in a space with enemy units, there's another attack and they can keep pursuing after that. And note, the loser of the former battle could pursue after winning a follow-up battle. If the player has other units in the same place, the pursuing units join with them. So you could attack someplace and then reinforce it into another battle if you win the first battle. That could be a really powerful capability. Major battles and morale. If a battle involved at least 4 units from each side, discounting leaders, it's a major battle. Discounting leaders. I don't know what's a leader. Again, other than Gordon, I don't think anything is. The player winning a major battle receives 1 unit of his choice from the recruit box, which is then immediately placed in the space with the winning units. This may not be applicable here. I can think of good reasons why it wouldn't be, especially for the Empire. It cannot immediately pursue if it's a cav unit. The player losing the major battle must eliminate any one of his units anywhere on the map. The unit's placed in the recruit box normally. I need to switch batteries, and then we'll get to the last of the advanced rules, and then I guess dive into the specifics, although I kind of want to pause. Okay, on to supply. Leaders supply units, there aren't any fleet units, don't know if there are, and units designated as an automatic supply by the scenario will always be in supply. I think all the Mahdiist units are in supply. Other units are in supply if they're in or within 2 spaces of a friendly supply unit, a friendly occupied fort, fortress, base, or friendly fleet. I don't think we have bases. We have a port, though, which might... there can be enemy units in the intervening spaces. All other units are out of supply. If they begin the march phase out of supply, they have 1 less movement. If they begin battle out of supply, they have 1 less. Each unit has 1 less combat factor. Some scenarios will have fort markers. I don't have any here. Essentially, you can build it during recruiting phase. The unit that builds it spends the turn building it. The units in the fort aren't affected by panic. The fort is aligned to that country. If enemy units occupy that fort, they destroy it. Also, you can pull it up, you can take it off the map in order to build another one if you like. And forts provide supplies. Okay. Take a moment. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I tried to go to sleep at like 1:30, somewhere around there. And I've got something I've really got to take care of. Like, it's absolutely vital. And it involves trying to make a phone call. And I don't even know if I can do that. Because I don't have a phone of my own. And I no longer have my Skype. So yeah, I really don't know whether I'm going to be able to or not. I have a site that's supposedly able to make free phone calls from, but not everywhere accepts it. And I have one that places do take phone calls from, but it like runs out after 2 minutes or something, which isn't going to work. But I could actually pay to use that second one, I guess. Or maybe use my other computer and try to get Teams and see if like I can use Skype from that. I can't use Google Phone because you need a phone number that they can like contact you once, basically, to use Google Phone. And then you're hooked up and you can lose your phone after that. My internet provider supposedly provides me free phone service. None of the phones I have work for them, but I think I can trade one of them in for a free phone, but it's like, oh, fuck, how do I go about all this shit? You know, I don't know, but that may be my major task tomorrow or this week or whatever. I don't fucking know. I hate it. I hate it. Okay. This game only goes, it covers the period from when the Egyptian army commanded by Hicks Pasha was wiped out to when the Mahdists stormed Khartoum and killed Gordon. The green stuff, wow, blue-green problem here. I mean, I can see the difference in these pretty easily. This is just me. My difficulty makes them kind of blur a little bit together. But the green stuff is the Mahdists. The blue is the Egyptians. And the red is the British. I can live with it. We have different types of counters. Mahdi is his own type of counter. I guess Gordon is his own type of counter, but it doesn't say he's a leader, right? Then they have tribal units. And again, this is important for the cards. They'll tell you what you can move. Jihadiya, which are modest but armed with more European modern weaponry. And they don't tend to be as good, but... And then we have cavalry, which includes both horse and camel, which are treated differently. If we look here, desert route, empire, only leaders in camel corps can use. Modists, all units can use. But if it says cavalry, at least for the modists, I assume I can use horseman or camel at the same time. For the empire, well, Gordon's his own type of unit. He's not specified as a leader anywhere that I recall. Then we have infantry, cav, and camels. Camels are separate from cav here. Cool. They'll be treated differently. We also have some artillery. Okay. So remember, artillery give a bonus. We got river boats. I'm guessing they count as fleets. We got garrisons. It says static on them too. Excellent. Okay. So they're just forbidden to move. That's cool. They don't look any different from, or they don't look significantly different to me from like Egyptian infantry, even though they're in a different pose or something. I don't know. It's not something I'm capable of dealing with. Give me some kind of, I don't know, something else other than just a picture to identify stuff with. Then we have a list of identification, that's shortenings of names and whatnot. Setup is set here. It's not absolutely fixed. The modists have a little bit of Madiists have a little bit of flexibility, which I took advantage of. In particular, these couple cav here, I want to get together so that I can squish, move up, fight, whatever. But I want to focus on moving north as opposed to having them spread around trying to pick things off. But it might be important to pick something like this off. I don't know. Anyway. The card decks, the Empire's cards are split into two decks. They have a deck A and a deck B. Deck A gets shuffled and put on top of deck B. The Mahdiists have just one pile of 9 cards. Again, I shuffled them using dice because you give me too few cards, and I feel like I need to randomize more. Okay, Mahdi wins the game if his units occupy Khartoum, Wadi Haifa, and I don't know how to... Swakin. Okay. If they hold all 3 of them, they win the game at any time. They win a total victory in the game. If they haven't won a total victory, you wait until the end of the game when it plays all out, and you'll count victory points. The Empire gets 3 for each of the aforementioned locations, and 1 for each other town that they occupy. This has to be occupy in all cases. There's no control held afterwards. The Empire has a goal of 9 victory points. So if they can hold the 3 primary locations, they too win if they hold them at the end of the game. Otherwise, the Mahdiists will get a lesser victory. Recruits. The Mahdiist player places the units specified on his card at random from those in the Mahdiist reinforcement box. So we're going to probably need a cup to shuffle stuff in with. Deploy units in the space containing the Mahdi unit and or any towns or fortresses occupied by their units. 2 cards allow placement in spaces not occupied by the Empire. The Empire. Cards will specify the British units to be placed. If a card is picked a second time due to a reshuffle, the Empire player may re-recruit any 2 British units of his choice from those named in the card that are in the Empire eliminated box, except for Gordon, who doesn't look that important. I mean, yeah, he's elite, but the cards specify the number of Egyptian units that may be chosen by the player from those in the Empire reinforcements box. And they start with some there. British and Egyptian units may be deployed at Wadi Haifa and or Swakin if Empire occupied. The Units on Send Gordon card can be placed in Khartoum if it's Empire occupied. Egyptian garrisons can be placed in towns already occupied by Egyptian Empire units, no more than one garrison per town. All the garrisons start on the board, so I think, I'm not sure. Yeah, it looks like it. I can't fucking tell. Like, here's this. Is that, looks different from that. Let me find a garrison. Okay, here's the garrison. Here's the infantry. I think this thing's an infantry that I pulled out, but like, yeah. The garrisons that start on the board have the name of the town that they start on. So at least there's that. But I guess you can rebuild them somewhere else. Seeing as it says Egyptian garrisons must be placed in towns already occupied by existing empire units. No more than one garrison per town. The Khartoum, Suakin, and Wadi Halfa garrisons can only be placed back in their namesake. Okay, the other ones are listed as something like Egyptian followed by an A, B, C, or D. Not just something like that. Recruited units may not be placed in spaces containing enemy units, with an exception. 29.13. I have 29.1. Oh, okay. Navy landings, okay. Unless specified on a card, units may not be placed in empty spaces. Another exception. Same thing. If eliminated, Gordon can never be re-recruited. Recruits must be taken on the turn they're allowed. They may not be held over for a subsequent turn. Okay. Now we get to the list of all the special rules. Hold cards. Some cards are marked hold. When picked, you can play it immediately or place it to one side. If you place it to one side, you skip your turn. On any subsequent turn, instead of drawing a card, you can fire that card off. Sounds scary, like lose a turn to be able to use that card at some later time. We'll see. When a card instructs the player to reshuffle the draw deck, the player randomly picks a discarded card and adds it to the draw deck. After adding the card, reshuffle the draw deck. Okay, that's kind of weird. The deck is already shuffled. Presumably you don't know what's in it. Now you randomly get a card back. Worse than that, cards marked hold or remove are eligible to be placed back in the draw deck. Now removes are going to be taken out of the game, but I guess they can come back from this. Just weird. If the card has criteria that cannot be met, this is something separate. The drawing player skips his turn. Follow disposition instructions on the card. Interesting. When a card calls for an action, the side that played the card always conducts the action unless the card says otherwise. And apparently on card 18, I'm assuming of the Empire, the Mahdiist player rolls a die and does something. I don't know. Maybe it's a Mahdiist card. I don't know. Empire contingents, there's two, British and Egyptian. Cards will state which contingent can move and attack on that turn. It might be both. Units of both contingents can otherwise stack and defend together. They can also use each other's supply sources. Gordon is part of both contingents and can move or attack with either. The Egyptian garrisons cannot move. If forced to retreat, they're eliminated. See the breakout card for conversion of one garrison to infantry. Okay. Mahdeists can move all their Mahdiist units for each card played. Okay. The Mahdi. If the Mahdi is eliminated, he is immediately replaced. He is risen. Roll a die, divide the result by 2, rounding up, and he'll show up that many turns later at any space not containing Empire units. This is in addition to any other recruits you get that turn from the cards. Place the counter after any other reinforcements are placed. If this is after the last turn of the game, though, he doesn't return to play. Yeah, that makes sense. Gordon's instantly placed with the Send Gordon card. He's considered an elite unit. He can move with either British or Egyptian contingents. Still no word on whether he's a leader, which does have some effect. Certain Egyptian infantry and cavalry that receive a panic are eliminated. These units have eliminated printed on the reverse of their counters. Oh, really? I've got at start. Okay. I've got eliminated on there. Okay. So we'll have to pay attention to that and try not to panic those. It would be useful if it was on the front. Uh-oh, I'm out of battery again. I found one that was sitting in my charger, apparently charged, but for God knows how long, several days. Not that big a deal. I leave the camera charging, but I don't usually, like I couldn't find my charger. Okay. Terrible. Right. If these units are defending in a fortress space or are in the same space as Gordon, they treat panic normally, including ignoring a panic result in a fortress. Interesting. I would have assumed to ignore the panic in a fortress, but Gordon can keep them alive. Only modest units, Empire leaders, and camels can move along desert routes. I don't know what Empire leaders there are. I'm assuming Gordon's one. I don't know what else. All right. So for the most part, these desert spaces are not allowed by the Empire. River movement. Ignore the rules. All units can move river routes using land movement. Khartoum does not have river spaces. Substitute river route. Okay. Nothing seems to have river spaces, so that's all fine. Alrighty. But what it means is, like, you don't need to cross the rivers or anything in any complicated way. How about more about rivers? Empire riverboats. Riverboats are fleets. Yay, it tells me. They do not receive the die roll modifier for the artillery. Boo! Riverboats can be placed in and moved into or through spaces along river routes, not ports. The Empire can move riverboats only along river routes. Each riverboat can transport up to 4 land units, not the 3 that the base rules said. Riverboats can move through enemy-occupied spaces. They must cease movement in Khartoum if it's occupied by enemy units, though. But yeah, they can sail right by the enemy. The Nile River flood or low. Treat Khartoum as a town on Nile low terms. Okay. January through February and May. January, February through May, June. And that's spelled here. Nile low here, Nile flood on others. Okay. So it's only a town. Treated as a fortress on Nile flood terms. Riverboats may move along the Nile south of Khartoum during Nile flood turns. On other turns, if in a river space south of Khartoum, they cannot move, although they do defend normally. Okay. I was like, I assume they can. They can move on rivers, right? Yeah, okay. Fair enough. So the white and blue Nile are too shallow for them normally. Empire naval movement. The Empire player can move non-garrison Empire units directly between the ports of Suakin and Trinicat, which are these two, and they're not that far apart. This counts as one space of movement. It does not require a transport unit. If the port that the units move to is enemy occupied, they have to attack. Exception to 28. What the fuck's 28? Placing recruits. Okay. The Empire player can deploy Gordon and British recruits on the 2 port spaces, even if enemy occupied. If enemy occupied, they cannot move in the turn of placement and must fight those enemy units in the ensuing battle phase. If the Empire force loses the battle, all Empire units are eliminated. These are not as bad as I thought they were. I was really confused, but I got to tell you, I was really, really tired when I got to about here, and my eyes were blurring and everything. Now I've taken a nap, and everything makes sense, so cool. Fog of War. The Mahdiist player may always examine all Empire stacks. The Empire player may not examine Mahdiist stacks underneath the topmost unit in the stack. Presumably even if he's in the same space, but of course if they start fighting. In the event of ties on the tactical superiority, the terrain effects chart designates the side that has superiority. Yeah, that's what I thought it said. Leaders, cavalry, camel, and riverboats are allowed to break off. I'm not sure that makes sense. It says certain units. I guess this is a limitation saying other units cannot, which, again, was not the case in Montrose. Not that I recall. Let me look. I don't see break-off rules even in the optional rules in that, so I thought they existed. Fair enough. It doesn't really matter. Ignore rules 21 and 21.1 and 21.2. Which are units in supply and line of supply. Mahdiist units are always in supply. Empire units are in supply if they meet any of the following. They occupy a fortress or town if there's no enemy units present. If judging supply for battle, they must be the defending force. Okay. Makes sense. Actually, I think the way they were worded before might not make sense. They are within 2 spaces of any friendly occupied fortress or town, and the intervening space is not enemy occupied. Remember, you could ignore enemy occupation in this. I find it really weird. Like, these seem more standard feeling. Riverboats and units in the same space as a riverboat are always in supply, fair enough. They don't provide supply to other spaces. Gordon and Camel units are always in supply. They do not provide supply to other units. All right, yeah, that was not as painful as I feared from my first reading. So there we have it, and we're about ready to cut loose and start on this. I'm kind of excited. You know, I was excited about Montrose. What ended up killing that for me was the victory conditions brought it to, like, I don't know, not the game that I thought it would be as I was started playing. Like, the tactics and whatnot for it felt way like what I think are the tactics that I would use to win that game are not what I think I would use after having played. Like, and that may be the case here too, but it was a pretty major thing. It was like, yeah, I don't actually want to do certain things. I want to make sure I don't capture places because I want to keep places that I can capture till the end of the game behind my lines as the Royalists, which was a really weird situation. Let's take a look at the terrain effects chart because that's almost kind of rules. Fortress, ignore panic. Supply source for the Empire. Town, Empire can use as a supply source. Open, nothing special, but favors the Mahdiist. Rough, the Empire units will stop when they enter a rough space. I don't know why I'm there, if that's the case. I could set up in either of these two. I'll set up in this one. I don't get any kind of defensive bonus for that, so screw it. Ports, Empire has special naval movement and landings there, and they can use it as a supply source if they occupy. And then for the routes, the river route can pretty much be used. It's only really there because boats can use it, is pretty much the thing. And the desert, the Empire has very limited capacity to move anything on there. The actual positioning of the game is kind of irritating for solo play. It's well designed for 2-player play, though. It's got, you know, duplicates of the terrain key of the battle results table. Terrain effects is hard to read, though, no matter which player you're playing. So, like, there's no way you can face it that's perfect for solo play. But I think it'll do fine. And it's pretty close. Like, you're given almost everything that you need. The terrain effects chart is the only thing that's kind of not facing you properly. So it should work perfectly fine. There's no space for the cards, but we can put the pictures showing so we know whose cards are whose. Because, oh, they're different colored on this one. Oh, that's nice. I think they were not in Montrose. Everything, all the cards were backed the same. This is kind of cool. The Mahdists have kind of a green. the Empire has kind of a burgundy type color. It's both kind of dark, and in my lighting and eyes, again, not easy to distinguish. Could have been easier if you're going to do that color change thing, but pretty colors. I can excuse it. All right. Something very weird about like cards that get removed from the game can be, must be pretty late, my neighbor's awake. Cards can be out of the game and come back. I get the feeling, I think there was something about troops also. I'm not sure. I think the Mahdists just go back here. That wasn't really specified where they go when they die. But I assume so. I don't know.